Oh, g'day. I'm Horse here, or Ross Thatcher, as everybody knows me. I've never been afraid to hide behind a false identity. Today I'm just going to do something really silly and dumb because I can. I've sort of been thinking about doing it all day and haven't got around to it. But this morning I realised that Modern Day Debate had another Flat Earth debate yesterday. And yesterday was one of those days I sort of sat around chewing the fat, doing nothing. That would have been an ideal place to jump into the live chat and stir up some shit that I sometimes may not do. So I started watching it for a bit and I ended up getting so distracted by the comments. I can't do both. I have to do one or the other. I have to either listen to the debate or read the comments. And that's why I thought, well, this is a good one because I haven't really listened to it. I've listened to the introduction, sort of, but I've got no idea how I'm going to respond to it. And so I thought this will be interesting just to see, because I'm highly interested in responding to the Globers, especially because, as far as I'm concerned, every flat earther is just cool as, and they know what they're talking about. And sometimes they don't, and that's okay too, but at least that they've realized the very first thing about the truth movement is that there is no right or wrong. There is just the current best understanding that we've got to work with and will be constantly improved upon. It's the scientific method, basically. You get a theory, we find a better theory or an alternative theory, we test it, we try and debunk it, we share it with our peers, and eventually we reach the point, well, we think we're getting closer to the truth. And I think that's all that flat earthers are doing. So I'm not necessarily saying that what I have seen so far is necessarily the best rebuttal from flat earthers so far. But parts of what I did see were actually really good, really hit the nail on the head. I'm not going to go through the entire debate because it's already 5:22 p.m. here, and it's like that leaves 5 hours and 23 minutes until the actual equinox for today, the 22nd of September 2024, actually occurs. It's on that calendar. That's the moon chart calendar, and it tells me exactly when the equinox will occur. In Australian Standard Time, of course. Most of you are probably still living in the 21st. So I think we'll just get started. But what I think I'm going to do is take advantage of the fact that because I've not really watched this before, not really paid much attention, is what I want to do is do what you have the opportunity of doing when you're just watching somebody else's debate and seeing that the people had you have been debating against what you could have said, or you'd be writing down notes furiously trying to think of later. So it's a huge advantage, of course, to sit and do these response videos. I'm not going to deny that. And I think it's somewhat disingenuous or almost dishonest to do that with somebody else's debate. But, to give them the benefit of the doubt, as I said, I've not memorized anything they've said so far, apart from one using, he said what did he call it? The robotomism, I think. So I'm going to deal with them one at a time, and I'm going to pause regularly and interrupt and be a rude prick and speak my mind. So that's just how I'm going to deal with this. I might not even go past the introduction. We'll just see how it pans out. So I'll put this back up again. That's how you do it. We'll see how that goes. We'll hit play. And we'll see what happens. This one's at least moderated by James, which is a huge advantage. So it's James when he plays his fucking awesome rockin' song, man. I know a lot of people hate it, but hey, I love it. What? English pseudo-punk, whatever, but whatever. Damn, I thought I'd gone further through the music. That's all right. We can just sit and have a beer while we think about
it. Here we go. Hey, everybody. Today we're debating Flat Earth versus Globe Earth, and we are starting right now with the Globe Earth side. Thanks for being with us. Dr. Blitz, the floor is all yours.
Hi, so I'm Blitz, and I'm getting over a cold, so my voice sounds like this.
So I'm going to interrupt right from the very get-go. Dr. Blitz. I mean, these people come up with these hilarious names. I bet both of these guys, because I have met the other one, Peter Markley. I have come across his channel before. I wonder if I can make this screen bigger and make it easier for me to see. I've come across him on TikTok running his little debate show, and I've had one or two discussions. He's a very snarky, smart sort of guy. But it's interesting that the guy who calls himself the doctor, but that super nerdy look, even wearing an almost doctor-like looking shirt, maybe he's a doctor. But they all call themselves doctor this, professor that, blah, blah. Because that's what you can do on TikTok, make up all sorts of names. I doubt he's a doctor. He doesn't even look anywhere near old enough to be a doctor. And the funny thing is, I mean, we all succumb to certain illnesses from time to time, and it's nothing to laugh about, but he is just getting over an illness because he done that shit about health, which I will say, if you want good health, you want to avoid the flu and colds and the mucousy sort of problems, I would suggest, from my personal experience, is cut out as much as possible red meat and dairy. The two biggest things, dairy especially, but anyway. Let's have a listen to this fella and get on with the show.
I have a doctorate in mathematical physics.
A doctorate in mathematical physics. Now, that's interesting because when you think about it, mathematics and physics, let's just make it a bit more. Well, not that much. A bit more like that. While we think about this for a second, you have mathematics and you have physics. Now, physics uses a lot of mathematics, but you wouldn't discern between the two and call it mathematical physics, because that then sounds like theoretical physics. Whereas physics that uses maths, you just call it I have a doctorate in physics or engineering science or something like that. So this curious term that he says he has a doctorate in mathematical physics. Again, I'm no expert. I'm just here for the ride.
And while Peter is going to address perhaps the most damning and obvious piece of evidence against the flat Earth, the sun, I'm going to take another approach.
Wait a second. The sun is not damn the flat Earth at all. So this has taken us all the way back to when, let us look at the lights in the sky, shall we, to understand the shape and nature of the Earth beneath our feet. Why? It must be clouds. That's basically the same sort of logic. You're looking at shit in the sky to determine what's beneath your feet. So that's not going to debunk the flat Earth. Sorry, bro. Right from the get-go, you've lost.
I'm going to show that believing the flat Earth claim seriously comes at a wickedly high price, one that I don't think anyone here or in the audience should take. So believing the flat Earth is fundamentally anti-scientific, despite what, flat earthers will tell you, right?
How can it be anti-scientific when the whole scientific process is a process of elimination, a process of observation, a process of hypotheses, of debunking, of disproving, of falsifying? Everything in science is incomplete. So you can't even say that. These guys, these come from this scientific background. And this is something that I'm getting onto quite a lot just lately. It all dwells from the 1500s, from the 1540s, when a Jesuit priest, Nicholas Copernicus, proposed, hypothetically, as a thought experiment, that what if the Earth was like the wandering stars, like Jupiter and Mars and Venus and all that, going around the sun? That was something that he proposed hypothetically, and then ridiculed himself as being the single most ridiculous thing you could possibly imagine. Now, this is Nicholas himself said, the very concept is preposterous. There's no way that the Earth is in motion and doing all these things. But as a thought experiment, it was just one of those things you throw out there. Oh, what if the ball was chasing the dog and it's staying still and attracting the... you could do any sort of thought experiment till the cows come home. It's not going to change the reality that science is religion. So when these guys preach about their religion of scientism, it can be traced all the way back to the Jesuit priest who had a thought experiment. And the only reason that he was encouraged to pursue that experiment because the Pope was very clever. He was clued on, and when you don't become the Pope, you're crying out loud, unless you've got some brains about you and you know how to work your way up the ladder to reach to that point. People will think, oh, these holy men just get appointed because of their holiness. Absolutely not. It's their connivingness, it's their backstabbing, it's their sucking up and working their way up through the ranks to become somebody and something. So the Pope back then was saying, well, if we can discover the entire Earth whirling around the sun, that means we've discovered it in the galactic sea, and anything found lost at sea becomes the ownership of they who find it. And so all you have to do is convince the courts, convince the world, convince everybody else that what you have found is in fact legally and practically correct. And since you couldn't disprove it, and they made the claim, the positive claim, well, we've discovered this and we have all these scientists who've proven this, therefore we're laying legal claimership to the entire Earth, or its wealth, property, and livestock. And who's the main livestock that they're interested in owning is humanity. Because according to the Black's Law, which they've been operating under all this time in all their doublespeak, humans aren't divine creatures descended from the gods at all. We are monsters. We're slaves. We can be treated like cattle. And that's where it all starts from. And that hasn't changed in all that time. The church has always controlled all the schools, all the education, all the sciences. They decide who gets burnt at the stake. They decide who gets to have their papers published. This has been happening since before the Crusades began. That was 500 years of vicious torture and murder all across the whole wide world. So when you are preaching the praises of science, that is what you are supporting. You are a Stockholm Syndrome sufferer of the worst kind, and you don't even know it because you're just defending your masters, because that's what you've been trained to do from infancy. Let's keep listening to Mr. Blitz. Get right one of these days.
But believing the Earth is flat, but rather by believing that the Earth is flat, you have to believe a series of other increasingly unlikely positions. These are things that directly contradict essentially the entirety of modern physics for the last 300 years.
Nothing contradicts that about the flat Earth. Everything about the globe contradicts physics, as in a gas pressure hurtling through a vacuum of space, incredible speeds where everything still just appears to fall directly straight downwards. There's nothing about flat Earth that contradicts actual physics. In fact, it's the most logical and sensible thing. It's probably why there's over 44 documents put out by NASA that talk about the flat Earth, non-rotating, motionless. The very idea that he thinks he's speaking truth here proves what an indoctrinated liar that you are, Dr. Blitz. And what's Blitz? Blitzkrieg, Blitz, blow their brains out with too much information, blitz them, shock and awe. That's all you're trying to do. And you're bringing in nonsense. It's all lies. And you don't even know it. That's the thing. That's why he calls himself Dr. Blitz. He thinks, oh, I'm Dr. Blitz. I've got a mathematics physics doctorate.
So as a prime example, a flat earther has to discount the existence of mass attracting mass.
Well, yeah, because it's not necessary. It's only necessary for your globe belief. We don't need it. We have density and buoyancy. If you're more dense in the air, you'll fall through it. If you're less dense in the air, you'll rise up through it. If you're less dense in the water, you'll float. If you're more dense in the water, you'll sink. And if you can pull say a basketball with force down to the bottom of a swimming pool and let it go, it will rise up far greater than the 9.8 meters per second squared against your gravity, because density and buoyancy are the forces. Resistance is the force. Attraction of mass is not a force. It's a pseudo force. It's been made up, and it's a necessary thing to make your spinning spaceball possible. So you can even have water cleaning the 70% of the surface. So yeah, absolutely, we deny that.
Called gravity. And the reason they have to do that is because we all know that if gravity exists, it would pull any sufficiently large mass, like a planar Earth, into a spherical shape.
No, that's rubbish. It's absolute nonsense again. It's another one of the assumptions that you assume that the entire universe is made out of physical terra firma stuff. The whole flat Earth model, and I'm going to say this, I don't know if even the majority of flat earthers that I know even know this. I'm going to say this. The flat Earth model, the reality of the existence of the universe we live and dwell upon, is that all of terra firma, the physical stuff in the universe, finds its place according to the laws of density and buoyancy and some amount of electromagnetics, because that's why we've got some stuff that can levitate up there like the moon. But everything else is density and buoyancy. The physical plane of the universe is the base of the universe, and our part of the Earth just happens to be part of it, the only part that we seem to have been sort of trapped in for whatever reason. Possibly a social experiment, possibly as a prison, I don't know. I'm not going to go into that at the moment. I'm just saying that the base of the universe is the physical plane. So your false concept of gravity says, well, all of these other orbs of lights in the sky are terra firma, and because of their mass, it pulls them into a sphere. And yet we still have freaking mountains, and valleys, and craters, and all that sort of stuff. Oh, but well, it's still oblate spheroid because of the spin. The whole idea that the flat Earth would collapse into a sphere is the mental conditioning that the helioists, these children who are raised under heliocentrism, the religious cult since 1543, this is the mentality that they have convinced themselves that that is what gravity would do. But we never see any other example of that. We might see magnets. You throw enough little magnets into a thing, they might roughly form a sphere because it's the magnetic attraction. But that's got nothing to do with any other reality and observation we can see. There's a universal up and there's a universal down, and nothing contracts towards the center of anything. Nothing. It's just lying.
This rejection of gravity means a rejection of Einstein's general relativity, of course. And note that this claim is absurd on its face, because general relativity can be and has been tested locally on Earth.
Again, absolute bullshit. General relativity. You throw about these terms as though, well, everybody knows exactly what they are. There's no such thing as general relativity. Yes, there's relative motion. If you're sitting on the bus or the train or in a plane, you can get up and walk around, and relative to the stuff inside that encapsulated thing, you're only moving your walking speed, whereas the entire thing can be moving that greater speed. Nobody disputes that. But this whole general relativity It's just more pseudoscience. It's all been debunked.
Earth in laboratories. Indeed, even early experiments were able to establish a high degree of agreement between theory and observations. As far back as 1964, experiments were devised to measure the effects of gravitational redshift as predicted by Einstein, with results agreeing with the model at the 99% accuracy level.
Okay. Even that is absolute rubbish and pseudoscience. They had to wait till 1964 before they could detect this redshift, whatever that is, you know, like, again, they just throw terms around, makes them sound smart because redshift, relative motion, blah, 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 relativity. They've got all these little terms which they can't even explain, not even just break it down and say what exactly, which explain the redshift, which is. That's all you had to do, just elaborate slightly. No, throw that out there. Oh, I'm highly educated. I know what I'm talking about. It's despicable pseudoscience in every sense of the word. In fact, I wish I had a better way of taking this back. There we go. I'm going to try that. Listen to this.
Rather, flat earthers will often say something like gravity is electrostatics, or it's
I didn't get it back far enough. Too far.
Density, which isn't a force, by the way. And
actually, well, it is a force. And I challenge you to try it. You know, take a cubic meter of foam and take a cubic meter of lead and drop them on your foot and tell me which one has the greater force due to the density and its willingness to move through the density of air and the density relative to your foot, which one is going to do the most damage. It's a force. Density is a force, resistance is the force, and resistance is the force that comes from density.
while it is true that electromagnetism is stronger than gravity, the claim that electrostatics can account for the forces observed flies in the face of everything we know about electromagnetism, and that's the force that we know the best. Notably, neutral solid metals do not extend outwards electric fields, and they hence don't produce electrostatic forces on other objects.
I didn't rewind that at all. I wanted to go back to listen to the
It's
actual thing
fairly
he was
easy to
saying.
tell when a metal is electrically neutral. Alternatively, a flat earther might claim that its density, which I should remind everybody is just a number, it's mass divided by volume. They'll say that
This
it
is not
explains why
working well
objects
for me
fall,
at all.
but they can never account.
This video is still going forwards. Bloody hell. It's up there. I'm doing the...
No other scientific theory even comes close to how accurate that model is. So to believe the Earth is flat is to reject special relativity and hence quantum.
That was my bad. See, I'm not good at making videos. Oh, there's the bigger screen. That will help a bit. I thought I was trying to slide it back a little bit to listen to what he said. And all I was doing was turning the volume up and down. Flat earther.
Electrodynamics, the single best piece of
We'll
scientific
get to what he's
achievement
about.
that humanity has to offer. To believe the Earth is flat is to reject Newtonian mechanics, the fundamental basis of literally all engineering. But, lest I be misunderstood, I'm not claiming with certainty that our understanding of gravity or quantum theory are perfect. Of course they're not. We drive science forward by improving our models and sometimes shifting the paradigm towards new, better understandings of the world around us. But bear in mind, when these paradigm shifts occur, old models are not.
Okay, so I didn't go back to as far as I wanted to go. I really want to go back to that thing where you're saying, where back in 1964 with their redshift and all that sort of bullshit, is that they had this 99% of accuracy. And this is the thing that gets you. You think, oh, 99%, that's damn accurate. It's not. It's not. Imagine you were buying a house in today's market, you found one and it's $1 million. And you make your final settlement to them and the seller says, hold on a sec, you're like $10,000 short. Nah, it's only 1%. Don't worry about it. Pretty close. No. You don't get to purchase that property. You have to be 100% correct in business and in law. So why not in science? In science, we're off by 10 to the factor of the negative 120. but that's okay. Oh, Eratosthenes was only out by 17% or 10% or 3%, depending who's telling the story. That's not good enough. If you're not 100% correct, that ain't science. It ain't law. It ain't legal. It doesn't hold up in the court of law. And being 99% correct about something to do with gravity and all that sort of bullshit, not good enough. $1 trillion. You know how much 1% of that is? I'm not even going to bother pulling out my calculator at the moment to tell you. You're out by some $1 million? Or is it $10 million? That's only 1%. Who's going to say, oh, 10 million bucks, chump change? Forget about it. It's only 1%. Nobody. So when we're talking about big numbers, 1% is phenomenally huge. You cannot just dismiss it. Oh, well, we're so accurate in science. So I'm going to try again. I really don't like to dwell, but I really want to.
A quantity like density should
Listen to
imply any
everything.
directional motion at all. When they do this,
I don't want to go through this twice.
of Einstein's general relativity, of course. And note that this claim is absurd on its face because general relativity can be and has been tested locally on Earth in laboratories.
Well, that don't prove shit about the universe, then, does it? Because inside of the laboratory is a closed room. So even if his claim, which he provides no evidence for, even if it's true, it proves shit. I mean, the light bulbs in my ceiling, well, they're long tubes. Therefore, the Earth is a long tube. Where people live in houses where they've got round bulbs in their ceiling, the Earth is a round bulb. That's all he's really saying.
Indeed, even early experiments were able to establish a high degree of agreement between theory and observations. As far back as 1964, experiments were devised to measure the effects of gravitational redshift as predicted by Einstein.
Measure the effects of gravitational redshift as predicted by Einstein. So even though Einstein did all this shit back in, 1900s or whatever, before they invented the nuclear bomb, as the scientists are so good at doing, because that's what they all do, they're all employed by the military to work to destroy humanity and then get lauded as heroes and give them some peace prize for producing the best bomb ever that wiped out only 50% of the population. But his redshift proposal wasn't proven until 1964.
With results agreeing with the model at the 99% accuracy.
With results agreeing to the 99% accuracy. So they're not accurate at all. Not even close. Not even in the ballpark. They're out by millions and billions and trillions. If you got 99.999% accuracy, that's still not enough for a hygienist, like I was trained to be at one stage, who was sanitizing mattresses with the ultra-high technology, with the HEPA filter introduced by NASA, and sucking out all the dust mites and the detritus and using the UV sterilization. It was still only 99.9%. That little 1% is why we have golden staph in our hospitals today, because all this antibacterials and shit that killed most of the stuff allowed the strong ones to survive, killed off all the weak ones, and then the strong ones kept on thriving and thriving and thriving, and now we've got superbugs. So your science is fucking us up because you're only 99% effective. You're either 100% effective or you're not effective at all.
Rather, flat earthers will often say something like gravity is electrostatics or it's density, which isn't a force, by the way.
Well, this is what was, again, you're straw manning. We don't straw man the globe earth when we tell you what your belief is, because we know what your belief is because we once believed it ourselves. But now you're straw manning us. They haven't even said this yet, but straight away you're into it. Electrostatics. Now, I don't believe that at all. Relative density is all you really need until it comes to things like the maglev devices and so on, which absolutely can be effective at a certain height in those frigid conditions, both near and above the ozone layer and near the superfluid helium layer beneath the firmament. Then those things have become possible, but we don't really need to use the electrographical maglev. I heard the term for that today. Maybe it'll come back to me. Magnetic levitation. We don't even need to use that for all the observations we have here on the Earth, apart from those ones where we artificially reproduce it with the maglev devices, which prove it's possible.
And while it is true that electromagnetism is stronger than gravity, the claim that electrostatics can account for the forces observed flies in the face of everything we know about electromagnetism. And that's the...
No, well, it doesn't. You just said that it is a stronger force than gravity, because the electromagnet will easily pick up big cars and shit up off the ground with that big magnet on the crane. So obviously gravity is an extremely weak force. So why would you go and say then that it's not in the same breath? And we don't even say that that is what the down force is. We just say it's density. Again, the guy's so full of it already. I've already missed the middle bit. Let me see how good my editing skills are. No, way too far. Way too far. There.
The model at the 99% accuracy level. Rather, flat earthers will often say something like gravity is electrostatics or it's density, which isn't a force, by the way. And while it is true that electromagnetism is stronger than gravity, the claim that electrostatics can account for the forces observed flies in the face of everything we know about electromagnetism. And that's the force that we know the best. Notably, neutral solid metals do not extend outwards electric fields, and they hence don't produce electrostatic forces on other objects.
And yet, they think the molten core of the Earth creates the whole magnetic shielding that prevents us from all that radiation from the sun, that makes all compasses work. You see how they debunk themselves with everything they say. They say it, and we know for a fact when you heat up a magnet, it loses its magnetism. And only as it cools down does it become magnetic again. And yet this molten iron core creates all the electromagnetism of the Earth. That's probably what's keeping us spinning and hurtling around the sun 10 times faster than a railgun projectile in the first place, as the sun moves 90 times faster than a railgun projectile in another direction. And we somehow keep the moon gravitationally attracted to us and tidally locked that whole time, even though sometimes we're flying directly at it 10 times faster than a railgun projectile, and sometimes we're flying away from it 10 times faster than a railgun projectile, and other times it's going this way and that way. You can see why I get a bit frustrated when they can't even see the initial illogic of their claim, but continue arguing it anyway.
Fairly easy to tell when a metal is electrically neutral. Alternatively, a flat earther might claim that its density, which I should remind everybody is just a number, it's mass divided by volume.
No, it's not. Again, it's not just a number. A number has been attributed to it. Mass comes from the density of the molecular weight of something, and then it's times the volume. So it's not even divided by the volume. Why would you divide by volume when you're talking about, okay, I've got 5 apples, I've got, let's divide 1 apple by 5 apples, and that's how many apples I got. That makes no sense whatsoever. I've got 1 apple weighs 50 grams, for example. I've got 5 of them, so I've got 250 grams worth of apples. Why would I divide it? 50 divided by 5, I've got 10 grams of apples. No, that's not how it works. It is density times the volume. That's what gives us the weight of the mass. I wish every glober could listen and understand that just once. Weight of the mass equals the density of the mass times the volume or amount of the mass. Mass isn't a word. It's just a place filler. You could say thing or stuff or whatever. That's all it means. But if you want to know what the weight of the stuff is, you work out the density of the stuff and how much of the stuff you got, multiply the amount by the density, and then you got the weight. That's how it's done. And if you change the medium that you're doing it in, like, for example, you put your scale in the bottom of a swimming pool, well, obviously the density of the medium is going to change the apparent weight because you've got a greater resistant force from the density of the medium. And if you do it in a vacuum, it'll weigh slightly more because you've got no resistance from the air. The medium creates the resistance force, which is earth, water, air, plasma. That's what determines weight of the mass. So density is 100% the reason things have weight. Volume determines how much of it.
Say that it explains why objects fall, but they can never account for why, say, two large lead spheres attract each other.
Well, they don't. That's the whole point. You can put two cranes with massive spheres next to each other in a huge demolition lot and bring them closer and closer and closer together until the spheres are this far apart from one another, and the chains will still not budge a millimeter to make the spheres attract one another. You're talking about a torsion beam with two balanced things where things are eventually going to come to rest against something. Oh, look at that. We made an observation. Oh, gravity exists. Fucking bullshit, man. The bigger the mass, the less inclined it is to move. And you use these tiny little balls in your laboratory experiments. They're rubbish. Lead balls do not attract one another one iota. Not one. I should blow on them. There, that 10-ton steel ball just moved towards that 10-ton steel ball.
Nor why a quantity like density should imply any directional motion at all. When they do this, they're disagreeing with Newtonian physics that has been known about for over 300 years.
It's absolute rubbish once again. We've always known about density and buoyancy since the time of Archimedes' principle. When the displacement of the medium, its own weight and volume, will determine its buoyancy. We've known about this shit for a very long time. We haven't needed to use a magical attractive force of pullity due to biggity that you need to make things cling to your side and the underside of your spinning space ball. Again, it's just full of lies.
The same physics that all of modern engineering relies on to work.
No, it's not. No, not at all. The engineer who builds an engine and puts it into a locomotive and puts the locomotive on some steel tracks on the flattened level does not rely upon the force of biggity and pullity at all. Doesn't rely on anything that you haven't even said what it is yet. You're just trying to deny everything that we've just admitted that it is. You know, there are some electrostatic forces. There is some attraction of like materials. There may be some of that. But in general, an object at rest will stay at rest. Object in motion will stay in motion unless acted upon by another force. That force is resistance. And if you apply a force to an object, there will be an equal and opposite reaction, minus the resistance. That's why you keep putting force into the engine of the locomotive. It'll keep on going and going and going across the flat level track. How does the engineer say, I need the force of the pulling downness of my train onto the tracks to make it work? That's not even entered into the equation. It's known that it's going to do it because it's more dense than the air it's in the first place, and the track is what is supporting it. That's how relative density works. The track is dense enough to support the density of the train. I really don't see how any amount of engineering requires your imaginary force of pullity due to biggity whatsoever.
A flat earther also has to reject the rotation of the Earth, as it implies a non-planar shape. Unfortunately, in doing so,
well, actually, let's not go too far past that one. Holy crap. Let me just really don't want to gloss over these too fast. I hate having to do this because I'm not good at it. As it sits there, 445, move it back just a fraction further. It's not going. I guess to 328. All right.
Were able to establish a high degree of agreement between theory and observations. As far back as 1964, experiments were devised to measure the effects of gravitational redshift as predicted by Einstein, with results agreeing with the model at the 99% accuracy level. Rather, flat earthers will often say something like gravity is electrostatics or it's
the one
density,
wafting.
which isn't a force, by the way. And while it is true that electromagnetism is stronger than gravity, the claim that electrostatics can account for the forces observed.
In fact, that's the other thing I want to say. Not only is electrostatics stronger than gravity, so is a vacuum. You can hold your finger over a straw in a glass of water, and as you pull the straw out of the water, the amount of water wanting to find its own level again will create a vacuum force in the top end of that straw, and gravity can't even pull the water out of that tiny, tiny, tiny little vacuum. There's the siphon hose, which can lift water up and over stories, multiple stories of buildings. And so long as the lower end, or the receiving end is lower than the giving end, water will seek its level. Gravity's got no say in it whatsoever. So it's not just the electrostatic force, it's the vacuum force is way, way, way stronger than the force of pullity due to biggity.
Flies in the face of everything we know about electromagnetism, and that's the force that we know the best. Notably, neutral solid metals do not extend outwards electric fields, and they hence don't produce electrostatic forces on other objects. And it's fairly easy to tell when a metal is electrically neutral. Alternatively, a flat earther might claim that its density, which I should remind everybody is just a number, it's mass divided by volume.
Which I've just explained. It is not just a number. This guy's going to be the mathematical physicist, and he's telling us that density is just a number. A mathematical physicist? A doctorate? Wow.
Say that it explains why objects fall, but they can never account for why, say, two large lead spheres attract each other, nor why a quantity like density should imply any directional motion at all. When they do this, they're disagreeing with Newtonian physics that has been known about for over 300 years, the same physics that all of modern engineering relies on to work. A flat earther also has to reject the rotation of the Earth, as it implies a non-planar shape.
But yeah, that's 100% correct. I agree with him there. We do absolutely reject the rotation of the Earth. And it's got nothing to do with the shape. It's because the Earth is flat and stationary. It's the fixed physical base at the bottom of the universe. The fixed physical base. So as soon as the globe earthers get that into their head and try and start arguing and debating against that, because that's what we believe, that they're still trying to invent some disk in space. That's all they've got in their stupid brainwashed minds. They don't even know what they're debating against. And it's so frustrating to watch them waffle on and make themselves look clever, because some of them do have some half-decent brains in their head. They're just applying them to the completely wrong things.
Unfortunately, in doing so, a flat earther has to reject the Sagnac effect, which can conclusively determine whether the measuring device is in an inertial reference frame or not. Of course, when one uses a laser...
And something is in an inertial reference frame or not. Well, inertia is the state of staying still. That's what inertia means. It's stagnancy. You know, they talk about the, when I last looked it up 2 years ago, whenever it was, the inertia of the process of the government, because everything takes so long to get the laws changed. They use that as an example. Inertia does not mean the continuation of motion. It's stagnancy.
Gyroscopes say to perform these measurements, the experiment detects a positive result, namely that the interference pattern appears, demonstrating a non-inertial rotating reference frame.
Okay, well, that's fine, because we know sun, moon, and stars rotate around above us. And we know that even if we use the conjurer's, the medium's tool of divination's favorite tool of choice, the pendulum, the Foucault's pendulum, like throwing chicken bones on the table or reading the tea leaves or reading the tarot cards, whatever, but that will also show that same amount of drift, which matches the 15 degrees of rotation around Polaris that all the celestials do. So these natural forces, it's no wonder then that we've also got modern devices that might also pick up on them. Yeah, we have actually come a bit further than the chicken bone era.
Of course, the original results of the Sagnac effect are consistent with both an ether model and special relativity, but neither are consistent with a non-rotating planar Earth. Certainly.
Again, they absolutely are. Absolutely consistent. Anyway.
By rejecting the Sagnac effect, you have to reject special relativity. So to be clear, a flat earther has to reject Newtonian mechanics, special relativity, and general relativity in order to hold their worldview. So the question then is, who cares, right? Well, physics isn't done in a vacuum. It's built on a well-trodden path on the shoulders of giants, if you will.
They love to use that, don't they? Because when you really look back at it, all the way back to the era of Pythagoras, who first proposed that the Earth might be a sphere. Do you know why Pythagoras, the mathematician, the founding father of this guy's doctorate, decided that the sphere was the perfect shape? Because every distance from the center was equidistant from it, so it was considered the perfect shape, whereas all other shapes, the square, the triangle, the rectangle, all the rest of them, they didn't have that sort of natural perfectness about them. And because Pythagoras believed that the Father God in heaven was perfect, he would have created the earth perfect as well. So it's all religious indoctrination from the backbone of the giants of philosophers and religious, superstitious people. And they also proposed, of course, that it is on the shoulders of the giant Atlas. That's where the original geocentric Earth was in the first place for thousands of years that you've known it's a sphere for. Sitting on the shoulders of giants as Apollyon carried the god Helios on his chariot through his 4 mighty steeds. This is the sort of shit that he's appealing to when he's talking about the shoulders of giants. Atlas. Long before Copernicus, the Jesuit priest, put the Earth in motion like a wandering star around Helios instead, who was standing still at the time, but later found to be moving 514,000 miles per hour in another direction. This is the sort of nonsense that they're waffling on with and don't even know it. Superstitious religious beliefs, worshipping the sun, and thinking that it doesn't debunk Newtonian physics at all. Everything Newton said is 100% correct in accordance with the laws of relative density. So he lies, he bamboozles, he's a Dr. Blitz.
The audience might not know this, but the best scientific model ever produced, is a model in physics called quantum electrodynamics.
Electrodynamics. They sound like really nice, big, fancy words. So that must be the best model ever produced by the scientismists. Quantum dynamics. It sounds so like quintessential, brilliant, the best ever. But the people in the audience might not know this, but I do because I'm a doctor. Trust me.
And this model relies on special relativity, quantum mechanics, and classical electromagnetism.
Anything that relies on any sort of theory that has to be called special. Big door out there. Get yourself out there and flush yourself. Special relativity. What about plain old good old-fashioned logic and observation? We don't need no freaking theories. We don't need no metaphysical bullshit. Just good old-fashioned logic and observation, thank you. That's all we want.
Almost all of which a flat earther has to deny. And I can go into the details later, but suffice it to say, this model makes predictions that agree with measurements to roughly 1 part in a trillion. That would be 99.999 with like 10.
Okay, so he's waffling off into the theoretical mathematics of stuff, but he's not saying the measurements of what. What measurements are you even talking about, Dr. Blitz? Oh, we're so close, but don't you know what? You're out by 10 to the factor of minus 120 in cosmology? Do you know how many zeros that is? That's 120. I can sit here and count them out. I'll be here for a while. That's a big number that you're out by, but then you're going to tell us by how much closer you are with your Quasimodo model.
Nines after the decimal point, percent. No other scientific theory even comes close to how accurate that model is. So to believe the Earth is flat is to reject special relativity,
I said, that's why they teach it to the kids in school. There's no other model. Gotcha. He's got me there.
And hence quantum electrodynamics, the single best piece of scientific achievement that humanity has to offer. To believe the Earth is flat is to reject Newtonian mechanics, the fundamental basis of literally all engineering. But
it's not. I've already explained that. Everything Newton said is basically, it makes sense. It's logical. Every action is an equal and opposite reaction. You leave something to rest or stay at rest, you pick it up, you're applying the force of resistance, you let it go, you've removed the resistant force, air isn't sufficiently dense enough to resist it, it falls down to the place of the next place of density sufficient to resist it. If it falls in the water, it might go a little bit down, but then it gets put back up again and it finds buoyancy. All of Newton's laws make sense. We don't deny them whatsoever. We agree with them. You're the ones with your special theories and theoretical bent space-time, or bending and warping in space-time, to try and make your own model somehow work in spite of the fact that there's no optical experiment that could ever prove any motion of the Earth in the first place.
Lest I be misunderstood, I'm not claiming with certainty that our understanding of gravity or quantum theory are perfect. Of course they're not. We drive science forward by improving.
Of course they're not. Whereas I've just explained the most perfect, simple, logical, observable, experimental, something anyone can do, explanation for everything we observe. But you then go and dismiss yours. Well, ours aren't perfect, because of course they're not. But just, if I waffle off on enough, you just sort of believe it. Just ignore observation, ignore reality, believe in warped space-time. Holy crap.
Improving our models and sometimes shifting the paradigm towards new, better understandings of the world around us. But bear in mind, when these paradigm shifts occur, old models are not thrown out and replaced with nothing. Rather, they're replaced by new models that can make even better predictions.
Exactly like you haven't done. You've just told us yours are worse. You don't even know what they are. And yet we already just had them explained perfectly by Newton's observations of the laws of physics. We didn't need to change anything. You had to change them to put your spinning space ball moving 10 times faster than a railgun projectile in orbit around the sun. And call it special. And say that you don't understand it. No, I don't understand nonsense. I think it's bullshit. Why would I even? Well, I have understood it. I've been there and done that. I know what you're talking about. And that's why I know it's bullshit. You don't know what you're talking about. You're just regurgitating what somebody told you. And you said, if you say these words, you'll appear clever and you'll get away with it. And hopefully you'll win a debate, because nobody's going to be smart enough to be able to debunk you because you're using too many fancy terms.
And if that was what my opposition presented, this discussion wouldn't be happening on a YouTube channel. It'd be at a conference or in the halls of a university.
That's why we don't debate geeks like you in such places, because you've been peer reviewed. You've been approved. You've passed the standards from all those hundreds of years, the centuries of the churches, running of the schools, the compulsory government indoctrination institutions that trained us for generations, until we get to the point where we don't want a nation of intelligent people. We want people who are able to run the machinery and don't think too much. And we can appoint a few geeky ones who've got reasonably intelligent minds to how to regurgitate their nonsense and win prizes. Oh, well, yeah, we'll give you a... You can be a teacher for the next generation, professor, doctor. As long as you can keep indoctrinating the minds of the next generation, we'll give you a position here in our government-approved indoctrination institution, which the church has been running since the beginning of time. You got to get that in your heads. It's all church. It's all religion. It's all government. Govern the mind, the mental condition, to rule the mind. Give me a child until he's 7, as the church would always say. These people
But that's not what my opposition is going to do. They're going to present no alternative models with quantitative predictions. They're not going to do any statistical analysis, and they're not going to perform any rigorous scientific experiments. Only one of the sides on this argument can claim to have done all of those, and that's...
You didn't claim to do anything. You claimed you got a whole bunch of theoretical nonsense, statistical analysis, quantitative measurement. You've done nothing. You've done nothing. You've relied upon pseudoscience every step of your way. Now you're making predictions about what your opposition is going to do because that's what you assume they're going to do because you've got no idea what their model even is.
My side. So to my opposition and to the audience, is this really a price worth paying in order to satisfy the belief in an undemonstrated flat Earth? Want us to throw out effectively all knowledge of physics we have gained in the last 300 years?
Again, more lies, 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 and lies. The only physics we've ever done and only ever been able to do have been here on Earth. So the engineers, they're doing physics. You theoretical mathematicians, you're wafting off in the stars, mate. Your heads are in the clouds. You've got no idea what you're talking about. You're making assumptions after assumptions after assumptions. I'm trying to get a straight answer out of a guy today on Facebook, how they measured the distance to the sun. It's the transit of Venus. Okay, so how does the transit of Venus tell us the distance of the sun? Well, parallax from two different spaces, but okay, so how far away is Venus? Oh, well, how big is Venus? Oh, well, it's presumed to be the size of the Earth. Oh, so many assumptions, not a single realistic background to a single one of them. Deceptive.
This means that bridges stand just by accident, not because...
No, I think we were building bridges well before 1543. There's been bridges built before the time of Christ, I believe. I believe there's been bridges built since hundreds of thousands of years ago. Many of them don't understand because they do crumble over time. We understand that if you hold a plumb bob and you stack flat level bricks one on top of another and build a straight pylon, engineers do not require to consider in the least curvature of the Earth or motion of the Earth. So his whole introduction is just absolute lies. Lies, 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 and more lies.
Newtonian mechanics effectively describes the nature of force. That nuclear power used to power millions of homes works just by accident, not because the merging of...
Nuclear power used to build... Oh, get the fuck. They just create heat, mate, and still run steam turbines. The steam turbine has been run for nearly 2 centuries, probably even longer. You're just using a different method, a far more toxic method, creating byproducts that can never be disposed of. Wow.
Special relativity and quantum mechanics. That medical particle accelerators, which are used to treat certain kinds of cancer, work just by accident, not because we understand quantum field theory.
Wow. Certain kinds of cancer. Would anybody in the audience like to step forth and say, I have that particular kind of cancer that this... What do you call it?
Of scientific achievement that humanity has to offer.
Let's do this again.
To believe the Earth is flat is to reject Newtonian mechanics, the fundamental basis of literally all engineering. But, you know, lest I be misunderstood, I'm not claiming with certainty that our understanding of gravity or quantum theory are perfect. Obviously. Of course they're not. We drive science forward by improving our models and sometimes shifting the paradigm towards new, better understandings of the world around us. But bear in mind, when these paradigm shifts occur, old models are not thrown out and replaced with nothing. Rather, they're replaced by new models that can make even better predictions. And if that was what my opposition presented, this discussion wouldn't be happening on a YouTube channel. It'd be at a conference or in the halls of a university. But that's not what my opposition is going to do. They're going to present no alternative models with quantitative predictions. They're not going to do any statistical analysis, and they're not going to perform any rigorous scientific experiments. Only one of the sides on this argument can claim to have done all of those, and that's my side. So to my opposition and to the audience, is this really a price worth paying in order to satisfy the belief in an undemonstrated flat Earth? Want us to throw out effectively all knowledge of physics we have gained in the last 300 years? This means that bridges stand just by accident, not because Newtonian mechanics effectively describes the nature of force. That nuclear power used to power millions of homes works just by accident, not because of the merging of special relativity and quantum mechanics. That medical particle accelerators, which are used to treat certain kinds of cancer.
Medical particle accelerators. Okay, so how many people in the audience are going to stand forth and say, my cancer was cured by a medical particle accelerator? I've never seen a single headline. I've never read a single article. I've never even seen it so much as hinted at anywhere. And, you know, I'm sort of in the alternative medical field in a lot of the things that I discuss on certain places like Facebook and whatnot. And I've never heard anybody say, oh, that the medical particle accelerator is curing people of cancer. We should all hop under that. I've never heard it. But he's just now made the positive claim. Certain types of cancer, you know, not regular cancer, just, you know, certain types. These general claims they make to convince themselves to live in their Stockholm syndrome condition. They believe this stuff. He looks sincere in what he just said. He sounded sincere in what he just said. And yet I'm holding his feet to the fire and say, which types of cancer has this medical particle accelerator cured? Which one? I would put it to you that most of his nuclear technology that he's talking about has been creating these cancers. And that I could talk to the Indigenous people of Northern Australia and find far better and effective cures to the condition to which this radioactive stuff that they've extracted out of the ground has actually caused in the first place. I know that for a fact because I've spoken to an Aboriginal elder who has told me that they've discovered it. They're not going to go and give it to the people that gave the cancer to them in the first place.
Work just by accident, not because we understand quantum field theory. And that GPS works just by accident, not because we
understand quantum field theory. And the GPS works just by accident. You moron. This same technology we've been using, humanity, for a century now, radio waves, doesn't just work by accident. It works because we have frickin' towers all over the place and we have little devices that can detect the signal from multiple directions and will give us a really good idea of where we are. And over the last couple of decades, we've increased the accuracy of our maps so much that we can see our location on a digital representation of the map of where we are. There's no accident, man. This is real technology. Flat earthers don't deny technology, you fucking moron.
understand general relativity and gravity. In my opinion, it's far more reasonable to accept the position that the Earth is a globe rotating about its axis than it is to accept that all of our understanding of modern physics is false and its applications are just happy accidents. So to my
Well, yeah, there you go once again. It's his opinion because he prefers to believe it. So that's a philosophical preference, the same one that the philosophers back in Darwin's and Einstein's in that day that found it preposterous to believe that we could be the center of the universe. But we're not the center of the universe, we're the bottom, we're the arse end, we're the base. We sit at the base of the universe, and it just so happens that the North Pole is the magnetic center of Middle Earth, the one that we happen to live on that extends all the way out to the Antarctic ice wall. So philosophical preference does not change reality one iota. And to assume that you live on a spinning space ball means you have to understand your own belief. Your own belief says that while you, in 24 hours, are spinning 25,000 miles around on your axis, you've traveled between here and there almost 1 degree around the sun, 1,600,000 miles. Now, if you can't understand the basics of that, 1,600,000 miles in 24 hours, 66,600 miles per hour, and you think that something, a little fucking refrigerator with a solar panel on it, 20,000 miles out in space, can just orbit around us, unpowered, in free fall, then you don't understand the very first thing about physics, and yet you call yourself a mathematical physician physicist, got to get words correct, a mathematical physicist does not even understand a two-body problem, let alone how we could talk about a third-body problem with something like the moon orbiting around the Earth as the Earth orbits around the sun, let alone all the satellites doing that. The guy is clearly an educated moron.
I have flat Earth friends here. The burden of proof is high, and it's on you. Can you reconcile the centuries of experimental evidence demonstrating the existence of gravity and the rotation of the world we live on with a flat Earth? Or do you throw that evidence away in favor of, it looks flat to me?
Well, pretty much we can, because you presented no evidence to support your thing. You presented arguments from incredulity. You presented arguments with no evidence. You presented evidence with no arguments. I mean, as I just said, one body traveling in a straight line, another body orbiting around it, it is not moving in a singular speed around the thing moving that direction. It is multiple directions. It is, you know, if I move this really slowly and this one coming around, when it gets to here, it has to stop, sharp turn, accelerate back around the front, skid across the front, do another sharp turn around, keep on going. This is the problem with orbital mechanics. They don't understand. They'll just say that first body isn't moving, and this one is just free falling around it. Oh, but then this one's dropping free fall as well. But it's also going around another one in free fall. They don't even understand the most basics of their model, and they think they're just spinning on our axis to give us the appearance of sunrise and sunset is all we need to prove, and that's it. But when the little old lady swallows that fly, she's got to have a spider to catch the fly that'll wiggle and giggle and jiggle inside her, and then she needs a bird, because how absurd to swallow a bird, but she had to swallow the bird to catch the spider that wiggled and giggled and jiggled inside of her. She swallowed the spider to catch the fly. I don't know why she swallowed the fly. Perhaps she'll die. And they keep going from one to another, to another, to another, to another.
Peter, we'll kick it over to you. Thanks for being with us as well. This is the second half of the Globe Earth opening. Thanks very much, Peter.
All right.
So yeah, as I said, I have had the odd encounter with this fellow once before. I'm not completely unfamiliar with him, but I had no idea what he and his cohort, Dr. Blitz, were preparing for today. I had no idea this debate was even on, or as I said, I would have been there yesterday in the crowd handling. But this is a better opportunity, so I can pull apart every argument one at a time. Let me present my screen.
Trying to share my screen here. Is this working? You guys see my presentation here?
Crystal clear.
All right. And if I full screen it, do you still see that?
Even better.
All right.
Even
Perfect.
better.
I will just go then. Nowadays there's a lot of confusion about flat Earth because flat earthers thrive on this confusion. They don't even want to acknowledge it, let alone correct it. So to clarify, I had to step in and coin a new term, robothemism. Put simply, robothemism is the belief that when the sun sets, it's going away instead of down. This might
Okay, so I know quite a bit about the Robotham experiments, and I've been able to explain them fully well multiple times. In fact, I've used it multiple times to actually defend the way that Jeranism was bamboozled in that Beyond the Curve episode. But it seems I'm still the only one actually using the same argument, which is quite odd, because I would have thought by now people want to know what's going on, and they don't really want to know. I honestly don't think that the majority of flat earthers actually have the wherewithal to understand some of the more complex matters of perspective and convergence, which is quite sad, really. But to call this robothemism, I have to go back and, yep, I'm going to listen to the very words he uses.
Acknowledge it, let alone correct it.
Can you reconcile the centuries of
Yeah.
experimental evidence demonstrating the existence of
Bastard.
gravity and the rotation of the world we live on with a flat Earth? Or do you throw that evidence away in favor of, it looks flat to me?
No, kick it over to Peter.
Peter, we'll kick it over to you. Thanks for being with us as well. This is the second half of the globe Earth opening. Thanks very much, Peter.
All
Listen
right.
to the terminology.
Trying to share my screen here. Is this working? You guys see my presentation here?
Crystal clear.
All right. And if I full screen it, do you still see that?
Even better.
All right. Perfect. I will just go there.
No, it's not actually perfect, but you can see the little tricks they're doing, you know. All right, perfect. It's not. But anyway, carry on.
No, nowadays there's a lot of confusion about flat Earth because flat earthers thrive on this confusion. They don't even want to acknowledge it, let alone correct.
Well, no, that's absolutely bullshit. I've been trying to settle the confusion and the bullshit for years now, and I'm still doing it, as I'm doing it in this one, as I keep explaining. There's no confusion. Physical plane, bottom of the universe, potentially infinite. The rest works itself out. If you understand the basics. If you still think you're living in outer space on a disk, well, yeah, you're a mental case. You've got no idea what's going on, and you've got no business being in the debate about flat Earth, if that's what you think.
Correct it. So to clarify, I had to step in and coin a new term, robot.
Our hero and savior. So to rectify it, he had to step in and create a new term, robothemism. Wow, what a great guy. This guy is a fucking legend. He's the savior of the world. He's stepped in because nobody had the term for it until he stepped in to do whatever he's doing.
Robothemism. Put simply, robothemism is the belief that when the sun sets, it's going away instead of down. This might not seem that important at first, but I promise it is, so I'm going to say it again. I define robothemism roughly as the belief that when the sun sets, it's going away instead of down.
Okay, so he's inventing the term and attributing to Robotham because Robotham was one of those who understands perspective. This is the most simple, basic thing that anybody can see, standing on any flat and level road. Looking into the distance, you will see the street lights going down into the distance. You'll see the road ramping up into the distance, and where they meet at the convergence point, the street lights start getting cut off bottom first at the convergence point. That is convergence. That is what makes the sun appear to go down, because the higher the parallel line as it moves away into the distance, the steeper will appear its descent to be to the convergence point, even though it's going to be way, way, way further beyond past it once it's obscured by it. So the usual sunsets prove my spin in space ball.
You see, while most ancient cultures believed in a flat Earth, it turns out they still had eyes and brains. They could plainly see that when the sun sets, it goes below the horizon, so their cosmologies had universal nighttime and universal daytime.
No. What we saw was superstitiously believed to think that the sun was going below the horizon because we didn't have the advantage of being able to send a drone up into the air. We didn't have the advantage of sending a helium balloon with a digital camera affixed to it to go up into the air. We didn't have an aeroplane. We didn't have a helicopter. We probably didn't even have hot air balloons back then to see that it's not going below the horizon. But what you can see to any logical thinking person is that when the sun goes behind any physical object whatsoever, it casts an instant and distinct shadow. But never, for reasons, the horizon. Never. Never. Not even a hint of a shadow. Long lingering twilights. Sun's not going beneath nothing. You were just like a little dust mite sitting in the bottom of your shag rug carpet, thinking that as the vacuum cleaner goes into the distance, it's going below the rug. That's your mentality.
Today, we know the sun is always up somewhere. So nowadays, the idea of a flat Earth can only exist by adapting. That started with this guy, Samuel Burley Robotham. In his 18...
Actually, no, that's our argument. The sun is always up somewhere. It goes around and around the equator, and the equator is freaking huge. Need summaries like that coming up. Thank you. I'm in a little video. The equator is freaking huge. Your horizon at 3 miles, it's smaller than a gnat's dick that has gnats living on it with gnats and the size of their dick. That's how small your view of the world is. And yet you try and show models of the entire world and think you've got the good beat on this.
1865 book, he wrote, "Although the sun is at all times above and parallel to the Earth's surface, he appears to sink below the horizon. This arises from a simple and everywhere visible law of perspective." Robotham's idea here was brand new. And yes, I checked. If you've seen this flat Earth meme, it's pure misinformation. No ancient culture in history...
You did not check that. Every culture in history, you didn't check. No, you just ruled it out because you don't like it and you couldn't find it. You think the internet is the search all, be all, and all of information in the world? How about you go to those cultures, spend some time with each and every one of them, talk to some of their elders and read their religious books, and then see what you can make up your mind about. You just dismiss them all. Oh, I can't find this in Google. No, dismiss. Fucking fact checker.
Ever believed the sun set by going away instead of down. Just Robotham.
These are things that directly contradict. Essentially,
What? I hit the wrong button again. That can happen. It's all right. We'll fix that. We'll be back in just a sec. All I want to say is, yep, if you want to find out what other cultures think, you don't go to Google. You don't find it on the internet. You go and spend a decade living amongst those people and see what they have to say. I'll be back shortly. Okay, sorry, I had a few mouse problems there. Try this again.
Robothamism roughly as the belief that when the sun sets, it's going away instead of down. You see, while most ancient cultures believed in a flat Earth, it turns out they still had eyes and brains. They could plainly see that when the sun sets, it goes below the horizon. So their cosmos...
Again, I have to stress, they have not plainly seen that. They've assumed that. I think that's what it looks like it's doing. Yeah. The last video I made, I will have to probably redo it again. I think I've said most of the things that have to be said about the nature of light. All light is apparent light. What you see as the sun is not what somebody else sees as the sun, and so on and so forth. So yeah, the sun is always above the Earth. From your tiny little perspective, it will appear to be going down as it gets further and further away. And also, the other thing about the light divergence, I don't even know if he brings this up, but the light divergence is the same sort of thing as when you shine a laser light that's not a real particular strong laser across a lake, for example, and hit a piece of target, cardboard, whatever on the other side. The light appears to get bigger, but loses intensity. What's happening here when the sun gets away, further away? It's losing intensity, but also appearing bigger. So to expect it to appear smaller through all the medium of the atmosphere that you're seeing it through is just another false global belief that isn't based on reality because they've given it no thought whatsoever. they can understand it's losing intensity because we're seeing it through more atmosphere, but can't understand why it isn't also diverging to the point where it reaches our eyes. They do no forensic study of this sort of stuff whatsoever.
Cosmologies had universal nighttime and universal daytime. Today, we know the sun is always up somewhere. So nowadays, the idea of a flat Earth can only exist by adapting. That started with this guy, Samuel Burley Rowbotham. In his 1865 book, he wrote, "Although the sun is at all times above and parallel to the Earth's surface, he appears to sink below the horizon. This arises from a simple and everywhere visible law of perspective." Rowbotham's idea here was brand new. And yes, I checked. If you've seen this flat Earth meme, it's pure misinformation. No ancient culture in history ever believed the sun set by going away instead of down. Just Rowbotham. Thus, Rowbotham became the father of flurfspective. Just look at this diagram.
Ooh, we got another one there. Father of perspective. They love their little jibes, don't they? Yeah, we're talking about the father of heliocentrism, worshipping the sun from 1543. That's your Copernican thing, but we don't give you too much of a hard time about it because we understand we're also brainwashed with the same bullshit as well. But to now call him the father of perspective. Anyway, let's see what his diagram says. It's probably more nonsense, but
To make it work, he had to put a big hill right in front of the observer.
beg you what? The Bedford Levels experiment was one of the first things he was famous for. No hill. I think you're confusing your
And also crop the diagram because these two lines are parallel and will never converge. A flat and level surface that's under your feet cannot block your line of sight to something that's over your head.
Oh my God, see, this is the problem. This is the problem. That's why it's calling it flurspective, because he doesn't understand perspective as opposed to an orthogonal view as it's drawn from this side-on point of view. It's called orthogonal. So, of course, from that point of view, no, they're not going to intersect. He hasn't put a hill in front of anybody. He's shown how perspective and convergence actually works. I can't believe this is his argument. Holy shit, I'm going to do an entire video on this bit another time. It's already getting tired.
My 6-year-old niece understands that. Sunset is quite literally as plain as day, and modern flat earthers are sunset deniers. I have never met one that isn't. To explain it, they use an absurd variety of rescuing devices. A rescuing device is something that has no positive evidence and contradicts previous claims or evidence. I am sure we'll see some rescuing devices today. But before we do, let's use this moment for some actual science. Through any
some actual science. I've got a newsflash for you, dude. Orthogonal views, 2D perspective is not the way we see the world. I don't even know if I definitely have to sit and make an entire video devoted to this guy because this is just, I can already see where he's going.
2 points, you can draw either a straight line or a curve. To fully disambiguate, you need at least 3 points. The more the merrier. Some examples. Eratosthenes' experiment used 2 points, but measure from a third and flat Earth is shattered. Elevation angles.
Beg you what? I love the way they just gloss over their little bits of bullshit. Eratosthenes used 2 points, but here's a third. The flat Earth is shattered. And then boom, straight away. Didn't even attempt to defend that claim, that false, lying claim. Everything that these globers have said has been false assumptions, lies, and claims with nothing to support them. And then they just jump to the next point. And see, this is the perfect example. When I used the example before about the street lights ramping down the street. That's what tall things do. If you look down a tunnel, the far end of the tunnel, even though you know the top of it is the same height as the height just directly above you, which is way out there, appears down low. That's perspective. That's how it works, and it applies to everything, including the stars. So you keep assuming you're pointing to the same point, again, with this false dichotomy, assuming that the Earth is curving to create the illusion of the higher thing getting lower. But at no stage does the ground beneath you exhibit that curve. It always stays at eye level the whole way. So you draw it on that flat surface, the high thing appears to get lower and lower with that distance. And so the one with the big red X on it is correct. It's exactly what we'd expect to see. Until at 0 degrees, it is fully 0 degrees. So he's completely showing his ignorance of how perspective actually even works, because at no point has he actually shown the ground ramping up to eye level from every single one of those points along the way, 90, 75, 60, 45, etc. Each one of those, the ground is still ramping up to eye level in their perspective at approximately 3 miles away, and that's the angle of measurement that they're taking it from. He's assumed he's going to have this massive hump on the round one that he's given the green tick to. Because it's infinite distance away. The insanity of the glober is just incredible. He's debunking himself with this.
To stars correlate with latitude. 3 or more latitudes will destroy flat Earth. Similar concept.
3 or 4 more latitudes. Again, how does that destroy the flat Earth? That's exactly what we'd expect on a flat Earth. You
Except here with arc length of longitude from Where's Wally using 1,300 data points. But you need at least 3, which usually requires traveling and or getting help from other people. Robothomism exploits this by isolating you, but you can still get 3 points by varying time instead of location, and that's precisely what I did. Here's a real diagram of how perspective works, not like Robotham's. With simple trigonometry, we see a Robothomist sun would follow an arc.
With simple trigonometry, without even once taking into consideration real world convergence. This is how the globe's mind works. Simple trigonometry. We just need simple trigonometry, simple trigonometry. That's all we understand, simple trigonometry. We don't understand how perspective works with the ground ramping up to eye level and everything above us getting lower and lower. Even though we can look down a tunnel and see it, we still think that exactly what we see is what we're going to get. Maybe we should start calling this tunnel visionism, since he's come up with Robothomism. Tunnel visionism says that expecting to use simple trigonometry to observe the world from a first-person perspective means that somebody else at the middle of the tunnel, cross-sectional view, makes everything exactly flat and all the angles are exactly the same, whereas how we view it from that end of the tunnel is also, See, this is why it gets so frustrating arguing with these mental midgets. They think they're educated and they think they're smart because they can do some little mathematical diagrams. But the one that Robotham showed, which he's already dismissed with the big red X, was the one that already showed that the ground ramps up to eye level. And as I've explained multiple times in multiple other videos before, if we were to draw that to scale, which is impossible unless you've got a really big room, you have to draw the height of the viewer from the ground 1 millimeter high. You know, that's like my 2 fingernails stuck together, about that height. 1 millimeter in height, and then draw a line from the feet and from the eyes 3 meters into the distance, and where they meet is the convergence points. That is how you would draw a diagram to scale by making the viewer 1 millimeter high. So not a single one of these diagrams they've ever drawn has ever been anywhere remotely close to scale. They've got no concept of scale whatsoever, how big the world really is. They've got no concept that it's one height to 3,000 distance just for the 6 foot tall person or the 180 centimeter person to a 3 mile horizon, 5 kilometer horizon. 5 kilometers. That's a really long way. 5 kilometers is a really long way from a human. It's like, I've got to work 5 kilometers, just go and catch my bus. Holy shit, better leave early, put backpack on, take your water bottle. You're going to be walking for a fair while. It's a long way. That's how far we see to the horizon. And we're 1 millimeter above this people. 1 millimeter above the surface. If we drew that to scale, and that's just for our local horizon where we think the sun is vanishing beneath the convergence point come around 6 p.m. thereabouts. Oh, did you realize that it's now 6:56 p.m. and the equinox occurred an hour ago? Damn it. I missed nothing. What are you going to see? The sun's already set. Yeah, go and watch it. Set due west. I know what the equinox is. I know how it works. I know my shit. Okay. That is good shit. Yeah, these diagrams are meaningless. Absolutely meaningless because he accused Robotham of putting a hill in front of him. A hill, a millimeter high, 3 meters away to a 1 millimeter person. A hill? A fucking hill? Hello? Fucking hill? A millimeter high and 3 meters? You can't even draw a simple diagram that represents how perspective works.
Tangent function through time. I demonstrated this visually by holding a flashlight at my waist and walking straight away from the camera until it was gone. If we overlay frames at a constant interval, we see the distance between images shrinks dramatically, then sits still for a long time before it's gone. But this is not what the sun does, and I took a 3-hour time lapse to
Actually, I have seen him do this demonstration before, and this is the first time I've seen it today. So I'm going to pay a bit more closer attention to that because, again, there's no comparison in the scale, but we just saw that disappear beneath the horizon just because he walked away, did we not? Did we not? I believe that's what I just saw. I'm not going to rewind it.
prove it. If you're trying to measure the sun's size, exposure is a problem. To show this, I had 2 identical cameras side by side, one with welding glass and one without. But
I will agree with him right there. So if you're going to show true size, exposure is a problem because what is the sun? It's a glare, an apparition of light that reaches our eyes and has an apparent size. So you have to go to all manner of lengths, welder's glasses, ironically enough, filters, to try and actually come close to demonstrating what it is you think you're even talking about. Whereas 99.999999998% of the time, most people are not using that shit to look at the sun, and yet they're still making the claim that the sun doesn't shrink when it sets. Now, how many people actually forensically analyze this and can make the claim that it doesn't get smaller as it gets towards the horizon, even though I've already explained the reason why it gets bigger? Because of the divergence of light seen through more and more atmosphere. You haven't even checked You just make these claims all the time. Oh, the sun doesn't change angular size from there to there and all the blah, blah, blah. Therefore, it can't work on flat Earth. Whereas even on the flat Earth, our, I'll just make this a little bit bigger for a second to make my point. Even on the flat Earth, our angular perspective from 3 miles away to there to 3 miles away to there, if the sun is setting, it's still going to be going like this towards midday to reach the apex, even though we know it's doing this. It's just going how it's going to appear to us. Just go into the middle of the tunnel and have a look. And the tunnel isn't even that high. As high as the sun. The higher it gets, the steeper it looks. It's almost like a no-brainer. Once you got it, I suppose. The other side of the Dunning-Kruger effect there. All right, let's have a look at some more of his nonsense.
Size was not the main thing I was trying to measure. It was position. I used a compass and sextant to get hard numbers, but the footage speaks for itself. When we overlay frames from the time lapse, when we overlay frames like we did with the flashlight, it's completely different. The distance.
Also, because it actually did get smaller and smaller. Now size isn't the thing that you're looking for. Wow! 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 It's actually getting smaller and smaller. But that's not what you were looking for. Holy crap. I can't believe the excusism these guys go through.
Longitude from Where's Wally using 1,300 data points, but you need at least 3, which usually requires traveling and or getting help from other people. Robothomism exploits this by isolating you, but you can still get 3 points by varying time instead of location, and that's precisely what I did. Here's a real diagram of how...
Hang on a sec, did you hear that? You can get real points by varying time instead of location. I missed that one previously. He's getting real variance points instead of changing location. He's changing time. The very flat Earth model that we've been talking about this whole time is that the sun acts like the hour hand of a clock going around once every 24 hours. So as it changes location, that's the change of time itself. Not Kronos, it's not Saturn, the great deceiver in the sky. Time is the sun. So by changing time, you've literally changed location. Or alternatively, you measure the travel of distance over time. That's how we know how fast we're traveling. 60 kilometers per hour, 100 kilometers per hour. It's all per time. And time is ruled by the sun, not by the spin of the earth. Change your time, change your location. It's all flat Earth proof.
Perspective works, not like Robotham's. With simple trigonometry, we see a Robothomist sun would follow an arctangent function through time. I demonstrated this visually by holding a flashlight at my waist and walking straight away from the camera until it was gone. If we overlay frames at a constant interval, we see...
Did you see that? Did you see how when it disappeared, that ground bit was rising up towards him before he cut out? Fairly interesting.
The distance between images shrinks dramatically, then sits still for a long time before it's gone. But this is not what the sun does, and I took a 3-hour time lapse to prove it. If you're trying to measure the sun's size, exposure is a problem. To show this, I had 2 identical cameras side by side, one with welding glass and one without. But size was not the main thing I was trying to measure. It was position. I used a compass and sextant to get hard numbers, but the footage speaks for itself. When we overlay frames from the time lapse, when we overlay frames like we
Ooh,
did
they
with the
get smaller.
flashlight, it's completely different. The distance between images stays the same the whole time. It just goes plop straight down into the horizon below eye level. Now pair that with the principle of time zones. UTC is 4 hours ahead of me, should be 5, but for daylight savings time. We all agree, I hope, that if I had done this experiment, this exact experiment, 800 miles east, it would have given identical results but an hour earlier. That means that at all times, for someone somewhere on Earth, the sun is currently going below their eye level. It cannot be.
No, it doesn't. We've just established that. It's not going below their eye level. It's disappearing into the convergence point, so that the convergence point is hiding it from eye level. And if they got their eye level higher, they'd see it again. It's not going below. The horizon itself is an optical illusion. Everything you're talking about here is optical illusion after optical illusion, and you're still trying to claim it as physical science. It's actually going beneath you. As I said in one of the comments on this video, I've got a recent video I did. I don't know, it was a few weeks back now. I was just at work and I just thought this is a perfect opportunity to see how the clouds are disappearing into the distance in one place, and yet over then to my left, there's a bit of a hill and it's quite a good distance away. And the clouds there are getting obscured by the hill. I can't see them. But the clouds there, I can see them disappear and all the way into the convergence point. So am I automatically supposed to believe that the clouds obscured by the hill are below the hill? I would be a fool if I thought that, because they're obviously not. They're way higher than the hill, as I can tell by the ones further away, not obscured by the hill. So the nearby thing getting in the way, creating an obscurity point, is not curvature. It is not above the things it's obscuring. And yet your whole argument is depending upon saying that the sun is disappearing below things, and you can't even understand near things. You have no sense of scale, no sense of perspective.
Both above and below a flat Earth at the same time. The only answer is that eye level is relative, changing by 1 degree every 69 miles. As assured.
The fuck? I heard that. I'm definitely coming back to do an entire expose on this one alone. If I had a protractor in my hands, let me make my hands a little bit bigger. If I had a protractor in my hands, we know that thing we used in school in geometry in 3rd grade, 180 degrees, 180 degrees, 90 degrees, 45, 45. And it's got 180 little divisions all the way around it. What that really means, what he's really just been trying to say is that in that tiny, tiny, tiny little division between 1 degree and another degree, not all protractors will even show that. They're probably doing 5s or 2s or whatever. But if we had one that could show 1 degree of difference, that distance between that little point and that little point is 69 miles. It's a shitload of curvature. And yet they're trying to say that 69 miles only has 1 degree of drop. That's their mental malfunction that they don't understand. They think the 1 degree is in 69 miles. They don't realize that 69 miles represents 1 degree for their globular ray. See how they're mentally confused, they're mental midgets, they have no idea what they're talking about. They can't critically think about a single thing, and yet they will think that I'm the one that's got it all wrong. They will literally come and attack me for that. So it's only 1 degree and 69 miles. I say no. Only 69 miles is 1 degree on your protractor. Massive. amount. And if we were to work it out to the size of the globe, it would be more than one Burj Khalifa of drop, the world's tallest building, from the top to the bottom of that 1 degree over 69 miles. Go figure. But they try and tell you, well, boats disappear over the curvature. But not a single boat that's taller than the Burj Khalifa, the world's tallest building, for fuck's sake. Anyway, let's carry on.
As 1 + 1 = 2, sunset plus time zone equals globe. So to Corey and Matthew, my challenge to you is simple. I measured the sunset and proved it goes beneath us. If you did,
Okay, again, I'm coming back to that. I'm going to come back to that. I'm just going to leave this quickly here now. Time zones work because, as we see on our massive, massive, massive Earth, the sun takes 24 hours to go around once. And it does it in 25,000 miles tonight, especially because it's the equinox. So every time it makes a 24th of the segment, it's moved into another time zone. The globe has no say over that whatsoever. In very fact, if we really want to get down to the nuts and bolts of it, in the northern center where it's really small, the small side of the pizza, you've got 19 time zones. 19. 19, but there's 24 around the equator. How does that happen? Oh, you take a 3-hour leap across the Bering Strait and rub it out a bit and hope nobody else really notices. 24 around the equator, it's exactly what we'd expect because it takes 24 hours to make a 25,000-mile revolution daily. How many time zones do you think we'd have in the bigger part of the pizza? 19. Match the globe. We've got 32. 32. Get that in your head because the sun seems to be moving at a relative speed, much slower to cover a much bigger distance. And most of those time zones are half-hour increments because it takes longer for the sun to get around in your apparent point of view. And see, from the people on the inside, their apparent point of view, boom, 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 you got to have 5 time zones in the US, but we've got 2 in Australia with a half-hour zone in the middle. Makes no sense.
disagree, then explain where I went wrong. Show the math, show the missing factor, show a scientific theory,
Okay.
not a rescuing device that explains my evidence.
A rescuing device. What you just called a rescuing device is actually, I guess, when you're struggling and you need to be rescued, I guess that's probably what I just did. Anyway, it's already after 7:15 now. Well, it will be in a minute, 7:14. I wasn't going to do this all evening and all night because I know I could be here. This debate goes for 3 hours and I just addressed 10 or 20 minutes or whatever of the opening. So that's what I'm going to leave it at for this one. I might even upload it as a premiere, but once I cook some dinner, I'll be fast asleep. Back to work in the morning. Paid bills, doing slave trade, lots of shit. But anyway, I'm definitely coming back to that that nonsensical, bullshitical. There we go. Bullshitical introduction that what's his name? Peter something. Peter Maver. That guy. Because I have seen him make one or two of those things before where he's done that thing walking down the road with the torch, but you see where he can very conveniently cuts it off. As soon as you see where the ground ramming up to it, cuts it off, and he's saying, well, this is not what the sun does. Well, that's true, because the sun isn't at our hip, you know. Even if you're holding it up here and you walk down the road, you still get a similar sort of result eventually. Gives you greater view of advantage, greater advantage of view, greater view advantage. There's so many ways you could say it. Higher you are, the more you get above the obstacles in your way. So the further you'll see. That's it. Simple. On a flat surface. Works perfectly. This is the one I'm constantly in engagements with globers. I'll finish it on this note because this is the biggest globe killer, is that they say, well, getting up higher allows you to see over the curve. Now, if you think about that logically for 1 second, let's say you put a soccer ball at the end of the field. Okay, so everything hidden behind that soccer ball, hidden by the curve of it, fully hidden. If you sat up in your seat from that far away, do you think you're going to see what's hidden behind the soccer ball? But this is the mentality of the globers. They think they will. They don't realize that the curvature 3 miles away, from their 1 millimeter high point of view over a 3 meter distance, they think that getting up 2 millimeters is going to allow them to see what's beyond that obstacle 3 meters away. It's never going to happen. Same as on a globe, if it's 3 miles away, going from 6 feet to 12 feet, it ain't going to show you dick of what is behind that curve. What's behind that curve is hidden, completely hidden. It's miles away. The only way you're going to see over that is you can either do 5 miles in the air, or you can go 3 miles in the distance and see over that curve. And you have to be doing it faster than the speed of sound, because that's how fast your spinning space ball is rotating towards the east, creating the illusion of the sun setting. So unless you're going to move towards the west faster than the speed of sound to see over that far distant curvature of which you are this high above and it's that far away, you are not going to see over it just by getting this much higher. You simply won't. Yet, on the stationary planar Earth, if we watch the sun set 3 miles in the distance from 6 feet above the ground, we can get a drone and send it 12 feet in the air and see the sun again. We send it 30 feet in the air, see the sun again. Send it 50 feet in the air, see the sun again. We see the sun over and over and over just by getting higher and higher. Because every time we do it, we increase that distance to the convergence point by double. Yeah, it's 1 to 3,000 to start with, 1 millimeter to 3 meters, but you get 2 millimeters high above a flat surface, it's 6 meters. You get 4 millimeters above, it's 12 meters. That's how it works on the flat surface. That's why you simply have to climb onto the roof of your house and you will see way much further than you can from standing at your front door. It's convergence. It's not curvature. The same flat street, same flat level. You increase your viewing distance exponentially by getting only a small amount higher. That would be impossible if it was the curve causing the horizon in the first place. You have to go forwards and over it to see beyond it. It is really quite simple. If you got higher, because your height is up from the center of the Earth, where that curvature is over there, it's curved parallel, perpendicular, it's tangential. It's curved towards the center of the Earth. equidistant. So the tangential line barely changes because you're going away from the center of the earth, away from the curvature over here to get higher. You're going the wrong way. You're going backwards. See over the curve over here, you need to go up and over, not up and away. Globers are clueless. They've got no idea. They've never seen curvature in their life. So, of course, they just believe everything that they've been told. But if they were actually saw it and understood it, they would realize the absurdity of it straight away. And therefore, we know the Earth is flat and stationary. And if you don't know that, hopefully someday you wake up and find out. Because it's a no-brainer. It really is. The belief in curvature is insanity. It is insanity. To believe that every direction is up towards the center of a ball. And every direction, every direction down towards the center of a ball. And every direction up is away from the center of a ball. Reality tells us up, down. That's it. The Earth is flat. That is that. I'm Iron Horse. Thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll see you around next time. Cheers.